Cannot be here. Make sure I'm unmuted. So thank you guys for joining us on the call tonight. It's about follow-up and troubleshooting. And really, I think this is a call that we need to do monthly. It's just so important. And I probably could have done 2 separate calls, like one just on follow-up and then one on troubleshooting, but they really go hand in hand, especially when we're talking about following up with our customers and our ambassadors. So throughout the call tonight, as always, if you have a question, I've got everyone muted, but go ahead and you can raise your hand on Zoom or you can chat in the chat feature. You can also unmute yourself. We are totally informal, so please don't think you're going to interrupt. So if you have a question or a thought, go ahead and ask it. So tonight, I'm going to start with follow-up. Follow-up is both with our potentials, or those who might be interested in Plexus, but then follow-up is also with our current customers and our current ambassadors. So I've broken those out tonight. For both of them, especially if you're new, if you are not comfortable with follow-up or even making product recommendations or troubleshooting, please, please, please use your upline. None of us were comfortable with it in the beginning. That's how we all learned. If you happen to have an upline that maybe isn't working the business, go to their upline. Reach out to the next upline. I promise you, you'll eventually find somebody that's going to help you. And as most of you guys on the call know, I will always help out as much as I can too. So don't ever feel like, I know I hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to bother Amy. You're not bothering me. Like, I live for this. I love to help people. So as we're talking about this tonight, know that you don't have to know everything, right? In your business right now, you can use your upline. So we're going to talk about potentials first and follow up. And I think this is just a hot topic. So I'm hoping to have some tips here tonight that are going to help a lot of you guys. So the first one is, you all have heard the saying, the fortune is in the follow up. But it is so true. I want to put some of these sales statistics out for you guys. Many of you have heard them. 48% of people never follow up. Okay, so that's almost half of all people in sales. They never follow up. 25% of people, they follow up twice. So they do a second follow-up and then they stop. So that's 75% of people in sales never get to the third follow-up, right? That doesn't seem like such a big deal until you hear this statistic. 80% of all sales are made between the 5th and the 12th contact. That's huge. That means somebody's making those sales, but it's not the majority of the people trying because they're never following up. When you hear the word no, you guys have heard us say this, when you hear the word no, you know that no doesn't mean forever, right? No might just mean not right now, it's not a good time. You've heard the story maybe, I love this story, of a waitress. So let's say there is a coffee shop and they have the best pie. It's like a world famous pie. You go to this restaurant and you've got some friends with you, they're your group of 5, and the waitress asks you if you want pie. And of course, she's gonna assume you want pie. That's what they're famous for. Everyone who goes there gets the pie. You tell her no, right? She doesn't go in the kitchen and quit. She doesn't go home and cry. She just brushes it off and goes to the next table. That also doesn't mean you're never, ever, ever gonna have pie from that place again, right? It just means on that day, you are in the mood for pie. I would love to know how many people on this call actually said yes to Plexus the first time they heard about it. Anybody say yes, like the very first time? I did not, right? People shaking their heads? No. I was like the biggest skeptic and the biggest butthead. I think Sarah Taylor and I have counted, and we know for sure I blew her off and said no 5 times. So I definitely am in that 80% of sales between the 5th and 12th contact. And I really, like I said, I was a butthead about it. I didn't know Sarah Taylor. We were not friends. So she was a stranger. So I was probably even more of a butthead than I normally would have been to a friend. But if she had not been persistent, I mean, can you imagine? I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have started Plexus. After the 3rd time I told her no, if she had just walked away and written me off, I wouldn't be here, which just is mind-blowing to me. So that is how important follow-up is for your potentials and for reaching new people. You are not bugging people. I hear that all of the time. trust me, you're not bugging people, especially if you think about your own experience and how many times someone had to reach out to you before you said yes. And I like to think, like, how would you want to be treated, right? We're not bugging people for the sale. Are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? That's not what FollowUp is about. We know, we have the belief that these products and this opportunity can change their life and that they need it. They just don't know it yet. So you're not bugging them. The things with FollowUp, though, you want to keep it short and simple, right? Do not give them a lot of stuff to read. It's totally overwhelming. And I know that's hard, especially when somebody just says, you know, can you send me some information about Plexus? We, especially us, because we love Plexus and we love everything about it, we want to kind of tend to puke Plexus on them and send them all of this great information. But that's overwhelming to people. So there are some tips on, you know, some things to do, and it goes along with FollowUp. One, you always, as much as you can, you want to use voice messages. You know, you can pick up the phone and call, but I know a lot of people, you know, don't do the phone, but voice messages, especially on Facebook Messenger, you can even do them. I know I have an iPhone. I can leave voice messages as a text. That is so good because they can hear your confidence in the product, your passion, and your sincerity for wanting to help them. You know, a lot of things over text could really just come across as maybe, you know, you looking for a sale. Even if that's not how you mean it, that's how they can take it just from reading that text. Here's the other thing about when you're talking to potentials. Just because they ask you a question doesn't mean you answer it. And what I mean by that is, you know, if they ask you something like, okay, how much is it? That is not the question that they should be asking at that moment. So you have to direct the conversation and engage them. Say things like, well, what exactly are you looking for with Plexus? You know, what health issues do you have? So I want to start with this 5-step process. I didn't want to separate it out. There's a 5-step process that gets us to FollowUp, and then I have this really kind of magic 3-step equation that I'm hoping will help you guys. The first one is, no matter what anybody asks you about Plexus, right? Even if this is a new reach or it's a FollowUp, you just want to share what Plexus is really quickly. 2 sentences. Boom. We're a health and wellness company. We have all natural products. It's helped me get off my Synthroid. Boom. That's it. You don't have to tell them everything about Plexus and about all of our products and about the triplex and the probiotic and all of that. That's it. You want to ask them their health goals. Ask them, say, you know, what health goals do you have? Do you have any health issues? That'll just let me know which product to recommend. But then you want to make a product recommendation. You want to encourage them to ask questions about that recommendation, and then you want to respond to the options on how to purchase. So, okay, you've done those 5 steps. That's the easy part. But then they don't purchase, right? Then they go radio silent. They're like in the witness protection program. Even somebody who was super excited about starting Plexus. What happened? Here's this 3-step process where the magic happens, okay? You have to ask them for a decision. I know that sounds silly, but it's ask and you shall receive, right? If you don't ask them, then what happens? You've answered all of their questions. You've made the recommendation. You've laid out how to buy. They're excited, and then they go radio silent, right? I know all of us are like, yes, what is up with those people? Most people are not going to jump in right away and say, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. Some people are. That's awesome. If you get them to, like, you know, place the order and close the deal in your first conversation, those are fantastic. But a lot of them need our guidance. They need us to give them the green light to purchase. So you have to ask them, are you ready to buy today? Like, you have to ask them that question. The next step in this little magic equation is you may have to then overcome. Right? So if they come back to you and they say, oh, I'll think about it, or not right now, or they say no, then you have to ask them what's holding them back. Because if you don't ask them what their objections are, you can never overcome them. Then your follow-up just becomes awkward because you really don't know why they ever said no in the first place. So you just keep it super simple and super friendly and say something, like, oh, I totally understand, what is holding you back? What maybe are you concerned about with the products? And then it allows you to know their objections and overcome it. Then from there, you can use a couple different methods. So if they come back and say, oh, I'm just not interested, or it's too expensive, right? That's one that we get a lot. You want to practice the feel, felt, found method. And this is one that I didn't use right away, but it's brilliant. So if somebody comes back, and this is why voice message is good too, just because a lot of this stuff, you don't want to be typing all of it. So if somebody comes back to you and says, oh, it's just too expensive, you want to say, oh, I totally understand how you feel. I actually felt the same way when I was thinking about getting started with Plexus. But here's what I found out. I found out that it was only going to be about $3 a day for me to start what I needed on Plexus. I also went through my bank statement for the last month and looked at what I had spent on Cokes and medicines and food at the grocery store that we actually never ate and wasted. Here's also what I found out. After I'd been on Plexus for 3 months, I was actually saving $320 a month. And that's with me buying my own products. So it actually cost me money to not be on Plexus, right? Do you see I did that? The feel, felt, found. It also helps them to know that, you understand, you've been there. But then the key to the follow-up is the third step. You have to ask them again for a decision, right? That's what you have to do. So, then they still don't order. Then we go into some other follow-up, and maybe those people you just bless and release because they really aren't ready, and you write them on your list and you come back to them. So I'm hoping, that helps with some follow-up for potentials. We've been talking a lot about how this is relationship marketing. So a lot of times follow-up doesn't always have to be about Plexus because, most of these people, especially when you're brand new, they're your friends and your family. So you don't only want to be reaching out to them about Plexus anyway. So the next thing, if you guys didn't have any, I don't see any questions coming through kind of about follow-up with potentials. I really want to talk about follow-up with customers and ambassadors. It is really, really important. It's actually, I think it's more important than follow up with potentials. I mean, certainly you got to follow up with potentials or you're not going to grow your business. But if you're not following up with your ambassadors and your customers, then you're going to lose them and they're not going to have success on the products. Follow up is key to their success. And why? Plexus is not a one-size-fits-all, right? So even though all of us on this call might be on the triplex, we're probably all on different regimens. I have to be on 4 probiotics. I got to take my second BioCleanse between like 3 and 4 in the afternoon. Unless you're following up with someone to know, we're not going to be able to know what's going to work for them, right? And a lot of people aren't used to that. They are used to going to GNC or Walmart, buying a vitamin off the shelf and going home, and nobody cares how they feel on it, right? So the other thing that's really important, new customers and new ambassadors, they don't have the belief in the products. They have no belief or confidence whatsoever. Sure, they might be excited. They might hope they're going to work for them. They may have seen all of the testimonies. They may have seen your results, but they don't have that belief. It's up to us to give them that belief. So if you don't, when you're following up with them, then they may not give the products a chance to work. So what does that look like in follow-up with your new ambassadors and your new customers? The first thing, it actually starts with the welcome call. And I know some people might be on the call. I'm looking here to see if anybody's rolling their eyes because I was like anti-phone call for the longest time in my business. I just projected and assumed nobody wanted to be on the call. Nobody wants me bugging them. That is so not true. Picking up the phone and calling your new ambassador the minute they order is so important. How else will they know how to take the products? How else will they know what to expect? I know that we like add them to the page, or if they're a customer, we send them the email. We have that pretty awesome purple chart for triplex. But one, how many people actually read that email? I'm pretty sure I didn't get the email out until after I'd already started taking my Slim when Sarah sent it the first time. And, how else are we going to be able to talk about expectations and really get them to understand what it's going to take? So on those three-way calls, I've had people disclose medications they forgot to tell us about. I've had people who, even though they ordered, they were still very, very skeptical, almost to the point of being not mean or rude, but very standoffish. Had we not gotten them on the phone, they would have gone through their journey that first month very standoffish and probably wouldn't still be around. So that's what it looks like day one, week one. That's your follow-up. It's the hostile. Yeah, there you go. I had one woman on the call. The minute they said, "Hi, this is Amy. She's our upline. She's going to talk about the triplex." She goes, "Just so you know, I am not going to stop taking my Shakeology." And I was like, "Oh, hey, that's great. We love Shakeology. You actually can continue to take it." And she was like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Yes." And then from there, she was like, "Oh, okay, let's have a nice conversation." So lots of good things on those three-way calls. But the next thing in their first week, you want to follow up again and ask them if they got their products. That's important. And if they're an ambassador, you can even use it as an opportunity to go through all of the cool stuff that's in their success kit. Even if they told you they're not working the business, do not make any assumptions, because I, again, said I'm not working the business. Even after Sarah Taylor called me and I said, "I'm feeling great." She said, "You should work the business." I was like, "No way, crazy lady. It's not happening." So don't assume, because most of us on this call probably didn't decide to work the business right away either. The other thing then, so week 2, you want to reach out to them and see how they're feeling, okay? But do not ask them how they are feeling. Why do we not want to ask them that? When I ask you, "How you feeling?" "Yeah, fine." Right? That's what everybody says. It's like a Pavlov's response that we're all accustomed to. Even if we're having the worst day ever, when someone says, "How you doing?" "No, I'm fine." Right? So we do not want to ask that in follow-up, because if you do, you're going to get on fine, and then 2 weeks later, they've quit their products because they had a headache and you had no idea. Okay? So what do? You want to ask specific questions. You want to ask them, "Okay, how do you like the taste of Slim? Do you like it?" And it's okay. You have to give people permission, and we do this on the welcome call. I give people permission to tell me they hate the taste of Slim. Like, that's okay. I also give them permission to tell me they feel like crap in their first couple weeks. That's okay too. If you don't give them that permission, a lot of times, because we're the crazy plexus people, they don't want to tell us they feel bad, right? Because they think we're all unicorns and rainbows over here, right? Like drinking the Kool-Aid. So they won't tell you when they feel bad. So give them that permission. Ask specific questions. Here's a great one that always gets a response. "How are you pooping?" That like shocks them into a response. And you can tell them, like, "Look, I know that's weird, but it's a key indicator to let us know how the products are working for you. What does it look like? How often are you going?" So then in week 3, you want to check in again with how they're feeling. You may even want to ask them, like, "Do you have a headache? Do you feel tired?" You're looking for some of those indications of a possible detox or die-off. The other thing in week 3 that you want to remind them about their auto ship. Use this as a time to talk to them about how important being consistent is on the products, especially for our new customers and our new ambassadors. When they're in their first 30 days, it's absolutely essential that they do not skip any days without their products, especially if they're in die-off. Because for a lot of them, if they do that, then it's going to be like starting over, and we don't want that at all. So just remind them that you don't want to wait until you open your ProBio bottle and realize you have 5 left to place your order, because then you're probably going to run out. So use that in week 3 as a good time to remind them. You also want to be looking for any quick wins, right? And hopefully you've reminded them that they're not going to completely change their health and lose all of their weight in the first month. But they can have some quick wins, and some of those quick wins are so subtle, we don't even realize it. So are you sleeping better? Maybe did you fall asleep quicker without your mind racing? Did you maybe not have that second cupcake at work, or did somebody bring in donuts and maybe you didn't eat one? How about coffee? Maybe you didn't have 4 cups, you only had 2. Little quick wins that you're looking for, and you can ask them these, specific questions. But here's the other thing, guys. In the first 30 days, if they come back and say no quick wins, that's okay. You can tell them that doesn't mean it's not working, right? We know everyone is different, but they need to trust in the process. And then some of that might lead to troubleshooting. And so that's what we'll get into now, because when you are following up with new ambassadors and new customers who are on the products, a lot of times it leads to troubleshooting, right? You might come across detox symptoms. You might come across some die-off. It's really, really important for us to know these things, because if not, if someone comes to you and says, oh man, I've just been pooping like crazy, I'm out, I'm done, this is not working. If you don't know how to troubleshoot that, or at least know to go to your upline and troubleshoot, you might be like, oh man, yeah, I totally get it, I'd quit too. Instead, what you want to say is, like, we know that's normal. Like, oh gosh, no. That means something's happening and it's working. We can adjust it, but you can't quit. Your body's trying to get rid of something that it doesn't need, right? So that's why knowing just the signs of when to troubleshoot and how to either bring in your upline. Certainly troubleshooting is one that you're not going to know right off the bat, right? You really need to bring your upline in, because the longer you're in Plexus, the more you're going to know. But in the beginning, bring your upline into those 3 ways and just say, oh man, I'm sorry you're feeling bad. We're going to fix that. You can't quit the products, because then you're never going to get results. But I'm pulling my friend Amy into the conversation. She's going to help you through it. It's as simple as that. So let's break, though, troubleshooting up into detox versus die-off, right? So what is detox? Detox is very simple. It is just your body getting rid of toxins and kind of resetting itself. It can happen to people on something as simple as Slim, right? So, but what do we do? What do you do if somebody hits detox? Unfortunately, it's like a necessary evil. That's what you tell people. It means your body's doing what it needs to do. It's getting rid of something, and it's better out than in. Let your body go through this process. They can do their own research into detox if they don't believe you. But most of the time, we don't have a lot of detox on Plexus, right? Every once in a while, I have somebody on Slim who gets a headache. But even then, it may not necessarily be detox. So with all of these, whenever somebody feels anything, what do you want to do when this happens? You want to ask lots of questions. 1, it might not even be Plexus related. 2, it might be not exactly Plexus, but like, for example, Slim. You hear a lot of people that say, oh man, I had a headache on Slim. Well, it's not Slim that caused it. We actually find out it's because they quit caffeine cold turkey because they thought they had to, and they have a caffeine headache. Or Slim is working so well in their first couple of days, they're not hungry and they're not eating, so they have a hunger headache. So that's why it's really important to ask these questions and tell them. I tell people right off the bat when I'm troubleshooting, I'm like, okay, I'm going to apologize ahead of time for all of these questions. Please don't think I'm crazy, but they're just going to help me really focus in on what the issue is so we can fix it. And a lot of times it requires a lot of back and forth. Again, people who are new, when they're going through this, they don't have the belief in the products. So they get strep throat, they're going to blame it on Plexus, okay? So we really have to ask all of these questions to really get to the root of the issue. Now, certainly it can be Plexus. It can be detox or die-off. And so detox is pretty rare. The big kind of like elephant in the room is die-off. Die-off is different than detox. Die-off can only happen with the probiotic. We actually have a document in the back office, and it is called, it's something about die-off. I'm going to pull it up here just so you know what it's called. Oh, it's called, Candida die-off. We can't say Candida anymore, but that is the topic of the document. So you can Google this. It is not specific to Plexus. Die-off happens when your body rids itself of the bad yeast. Whether you do an antifungal diet and you starve it off, or you take an antifungal, which is in Plexus Probio 5. When that happens, when your body rids itself of those toxins, some people experience die-off symptoms, right? There's no way for us to predict who is gonna go through die-off. One of my favorite examples, I don't know if she's on, yeah, Dylan, she's on the call. I use her all the time. I never would have thought Dylan would have gone through die-off. She was like super fit and healthy and didn't eat junk anyway before Plexus. And she had die-off for a couple of weeks. So one thing I do on those three-way calls in the beginning is I give them a heads up about die-off, because they've got to know about it. If not, the minute they hit it and the minute they get a headache, they're out. And I don't blame them, right? If I started taking Plexus because I wanted to feel better, and then all of a sudden I hit some pretty bad die-off and I didn't know about it, and you weren't following up with me to see how I'm feeling, I'm out the door. I'm like, this stuff sucks. It does not work. It's made me sick. So that's why follow-up is so important, and also knowing about die-off. Die-off symptoms typically last only a couple days, maybe a week. Severe cases, they can last, for a couple weeks. And actually, Sarah's on the call. I know her little guy's sick, so she may not be in here right now, but Sarah was actually on like this crazy cyclical die-off where she was like in a continual die-off process for months and months and months. And so we had to do some specific troubleshooting with her and look at her diet, just because she had, it wasn't enough for the probio. So these are things to just really be aware of. Common die-off symptoms, though, are like, I tell people they may get a headache, might be bloated. Some people feel like they're coming down with a cold. They're kind of tired and achy. But because it's the probiotic that's killing off the bad yeast, causing the die-off symptoms, the typical rule of thumb, and this is in the document, is you want to increase BioCleanse, because the more you get it out, the quicker it's gone and the shorter die-off's going to be, and decrease the probiotic. And you decrease it because it's the killing off, right, of that yeast that's causing those symptoms. Here's the tricky thing, though, about using that as like a blanket solution for everybody. Some people, if you do that and you make adjustments, so let's say somebody hits die-off. We know they're in die-off, right? It's a necessary evil. Their body has got to get rid of this junk. But if you decrease the probiotic because they really just can't handle it, like it's way too much, then it's going to prolong die-off. Like, we know the stuff's got to get out. If we slow down that process, it's just going to last a little bit longer. Some people are totally fine with that. Other people, they want to just push through and get it over with. So a lot of times I will ask people, like, once I've asked a lot of questions to target that it is specifically die-off, I'll say, is this something that you can live with for a couple more days? Or is it just so bad you cannot handle it? And let them make the decision. A lot of people will just power through. They're like, oh, I'm just going to be tired and have a headache for a couple days. No, let's like knock it out. Let's power through, right? Other people, I have a dear friend, Vicky. She had die-off for 3 weeks, like severe die-off. And man, she was cussing me. But I was following up with her like every couple of days. And just, she trusted my belief in the product so much that she kept at it, and now she won't be without them. So, you can definitely empathize with people, especially if you had die-off. I was pretty fortunate. I didn't have die-off. So typically, die-off happens when they start the probiotic. It might be the minute they start it, like on 1, or they may not hit die-off until they've increased to 2 or 3 probiotics. That's typical. That's for the majority of people. However, to make it confusing for us to troubleshoot, people can hit die-off at any time. The bad yeast, and I encourage everyone, especially when you're new, do some research on your own on a leaky gut and yeast overgrowth, and look, to see where it comes from, what causes it, how you get rid of it, that kind of stuff. But the bad yeast feeds on sugars. That's one thing it feeds on. So a lot of times, if somebody doesn't have the best diet, they can throw themselves into die-off. Over the holidays, for those of you who are ambassadors over holidays, I don't know if you remember, but come January, because all of us splurge with lots of alcohol over the holidays, lots of sweets, way more than we usually eat throughout the year. We came back in January and had all kinds of people throwing themselves in a die-off because they had just been eating so poorly. The minute they kind of got back to eating better and increased their probiotic to kind of get over that holiday slump, we threw all of ourselves into die-off. So it can happen at any time. That's why it's really important to really troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. Like with Sarah, we realized that she was probably in this cyclical cycle because she would get better and then hit die off and then get better and hit die off. So for her, she had to just starve that bad yeast with her diet while increasing the probio to finally knock it out. So it's just really important to ask those types of kind of probing questions and let people know it's normal. Like, this is a good thing. You know, it sucks because nobody wants to feel worse before they feel better. That actually tells us it's working and that you've got some major things going on that you've got to get through. If you stop it, you're never going to feel better, especially for people that are looking at Plexus for weight loss, okay? I was one of them. And this is especially true for people who have an autoimmune disease like hypothyroidism. If you're looking at Plexus for weight loss, and you go into die-off, that tells us you're in die-off. There's a major yeast issue happening there. That yeast issue is going to be the reason you're carrying that weight, right? Whether it's because your body can't absorb nutrients as it should, because, you know, when you have a yeast overgrowth in your gut, it prevents your body from absorbing the nutrients. When that happens, your body thinks it's starving itself and it holds on to the fat. That's also what happens when you have hypothyroidism. But if you know these things and you have somebody who's on it for weight loss and they go through die-off and they quit, they're like, I'm done. They're never going to lose that weight because the root of the issue is their gut health issue. They could go to any other product. They could even go to Slim and Accelerator till the cows came home, and they're never going to lose that weight. So just knowing that, you know, it's not something you're going to know right off the bat. That's why I say, like, I encourage everyone to kind of do their own research, but using your upline too. So I wanted to talk about some typical issues that we run across, right? And I just wanted to kind of go through them and what we typically do. And then I wanted to open it up to questions. If you guys have any maybe troubleshooting now, you know someone who's having issues and you're not sure what to do, I wanted to open it up for questions. So a lot of common die-off or common symptoms that you might come across that people may say, like, I'm out, right? I'm done. Headaches, bloating. Yeah, that bloating is very common. Gaining weight. Gaining weight is super common. And I get it. I would have run for the hills. I was someone who tried every diet under the sun. And if I didn't notice a difference in the first couple weeks, right, I was on to the next thing. I certainly would have run for the hills had I gained weight. So these people, you really have to pour that belief into them. And you have to tell them, like, look, I get it. It sucks. No one wants to gain weight when they first start out. But one, it's not real weight. It's bloat. It's water weight. It's your body getting rid of this stuff. It's most likely die-off, right? When those toxins are being killed off, like, you're going to be bloated. And it's actually, you can look it up. It's called a Hexerheimer reaction. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But there's all the science behind it. It's not real weight. It's going to go away. So many people on Plexus gained weight in the beginning. Sarah Taylor, she gained almost 8 or 14 pounds. Like, tons of people we know gain weight. So you can always, you know, say, hey, look, I get it. You know, my friend Sarah, she did too. And I know it sucks, but you're going to lose it. I promise. It's not real weight. Constipation is one that's pretty common. You might have somebody say, like, oh man, I had no problem going to the bathroom until I started Plexus. Now I can't go. Constipation is a die-off symptom. So is the opposite of that, loose stool or diarrhea. Now, that is one that we really have to ask a lot of questions to figure out. One, is it diarrhea? Because I know I see Amy on the call. All of our nurses know true diarrhea, like the clinical diagnosis, it's like 7 to 10 times a day and it's all water, right? It's all liquid. Most people, that's not what they have. Most people have loose stool and it's a couple times a day. And if you ask them, I bet they would even tell you it's really dark. That's actually the bad yeast coming out. Like, that's a good thing. But we really need to do some troubleshooting with those people who have loose stool, because sometimes it's the BioCleanse that they're too sensitive to. If you have anyone who has some digestive issues like IBS-D, you really have to typically introduce BioCleanse to them very slowly. I've noticed people who don't have a gallbladder, sometimes they're very sensitive to BioCleanse. And then also sometimes people who have Crohn's, depending on how severe it is, they might also be very sensitive to BioCleanse. So that's why you really got to ask those questions to find out, like, okay, when are you having the diarrhea? You know, and when did it start? Did it not start until you started the probiotic? You know, that's the other reason, guys, that we introduce the triplex one product at a time, several days apart. We want them to know how they feel on each of them. So if they start all three at once and they have loose stool, we're not necessarily going to know, is it Dieoff or is it the BioCleanse, without stopping one of them and doing kind of like a little test. So the other one I hear a lot is that it makes you hungry, right? I hear that a lot, like, oh my gosh, I'm starving. This stuff sucks. I want to lose weight and I just want to eat. That's a good thing. That actually tells us it's their metabolism increasing. So they have to eat, but they have to eat healthy, preferably protein. That's what we want to happen. We want that metabolism to get sped up. Now, eventually it's going to level out and they're not going to feel like they're starving all the time. But if you don't know that, you don't know how to kind of come back to them with that troubleshooting, right? The other one I hear sometimes, so let's say, you know, you've been on the Slim and the BioCleanse and you're on like 1 or 2 probiotics and you're feeling pretty good. You've been on it for like 2 or 3 weeks. I'm feeling pretty good. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I am craving sweets like crazy. Like I could not keep my hand out of the cookie jar. This stuff just isn't working for me anymore. No, it means you actually need to increase your probiotic. Because all of those tell us that you still have a yeast issue happening in there. You need to be on a higher dose of the probiotic, right? So that's why just, you know, educating yourself and knowing a lot about follow-up and kind of common symptoms, you can come back to people and be like, look, no, you don't want to quit. It's working, because we know these products work. And I'm so passionate about follow-up and troubleshooting, because it kills me when people quit too soon, especially for something that tells us the products are working. But unless we are helping them through that and you have that confidence, they aren't going to have it. So does anyone have any troubleshooting questions that they wanted to ask? We've been on about 40 minutes, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Don't be shy. You can chat it or you can unmute yourself. And if not, all right.
Maybe I have a question. How do you, when you're doing your initial consultation and you find people that are on different medications, how do you work around, how do you set them up and schedule them with their medications? Say, for example, they're on Synthroid or something for their thyroid, or they're on a statin for cholesterol. What's your recommendation on how they take, say, the triplex?
That is a really good question. So for a lot of the medications, there isn't any interaction.
Okay.
So they're fine. And I ask them that. Like, they should know, or it should be on their prescription if there's any interactions, or they could always ask their pharmacist. Okay. Like with Synthroid, that's an odd one, because some people have to just wait 30 minutes. They're used to that. I've talked to 2 people this week, and one, she sets her alarm 30 minutes earlier anyway. She gets up and takes her Synthroid and goes back to bed. Okay. Other people have to wait up to 4 hours. So it's really not going to be much different than their normal routine. Okay. So on Synthroid, if I tell them, okay, you wait 30 minutes to eat breakfast now anyway, eat 30 minutes to take your Slim, and then wait 30 more minutes to eat. If it doesn't work into their schedule, though, I've actually had some people adjust when they take their Synthroid. I've had some people start taking their Synthroid at night. So then it doesn't interact with their sleep.
Oh, Good idea.
Yeah, or they take it like at lunchtime. The thing about Synthroid is you just want to try to take it at the same time every day. It doesn't matter when during the day. Whereas Slim, you want Slim to be in the morning, right, to get those blood sugars balanced before you start eating.
Okay.
Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so one of my ambassadors, yes, has issues with people afraid to start BioCleanse. So here's the thing with BioCleanse. This is what I tell everyone, either when I recommend the triplex and then again on the welcome call. I tell them, I'm like, okay, you're going to do Slim. Here's what Slim does. And now BioCleanse. And guys, I get it. I wish they would change the name. People see BioCleanse, you think it's a diet cleanse or a colon cleanse, or you are going to be stuck in the bathroom. That's not what it is. It certainly helps people to stay regular, but it has so many other health benefits. And if you're not sharing those other health benefits or telling them, you know, hitting that objection head on of why they don't want to take it, then they have no idea. They're just assuming they're going to be stuck in the bathroom. They also might think, well, I poop already. Why do I need BioCleanse? Here's what BioCleanse does. It certainly helps keep people regular. People don't realize that we should be going multiple times a day, right? You eat 3 meals a day, 3 cars go into the car wash, 3 cars have to come out. Most people go once a day, once every couple of days. The other thing is, sorry, I was looking at the chat there. BioCleanse helps support collagen production. It supports weight loss. It energizes us. But one of the most important things it does, it oxygenates our bodies at the cellular level. That's really important because that prevents those toxins from thriving and then actually even reabsorbing into your intestinal tract. And I tell people, like, the average person is walking around with up to 20 pounds of waste and toxins in their intestinal tract. The reason BioCleanse is such a powerhouse with the probiotic is the probiotic is going to be killing off bad yeast. You do not want it getting stuck in your intestinal tract. Even if some of it's coming out with your normal, regular bowel movements, some of it's getting stuck, and that's going to get reabsorbed. That's no good. So that's why BioCleanse is such a powerful combination. So a lot of times people are afraid to start it because they don't understand it. And if you can kind of, you know, tell them all the benefits and why on that initial call when you explain how to take the products and why we do BioCleanse second after Slim and before the ProBio, then they're going to be more likely to do it. So Christine says, yeah, sometimes Synthroid has to be taken first thing in the morning. Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. You definitely, whatever their prescription says, that's what you want to stick with, no matter what the medication is. Somebody else says, how do you know when to come off a medication? You actually, that's only with doctor approval. So if you're thinking of weaning yourself off a medication, you need to do it with your doctor's approval. With me, with my Synthroid, when I weaned myself off, once I was going in every 6 months anyway for blood work because I had the growth, because I eventually had surgery. Once I started on Plexus and been on it for a couple months, I actually was feeling way better than I ever felt on my Synthroid. I made an appointment with my endocrinologist and I asked her, because she had already approved Plexus. And I said, hey, are you okay with me going off of my medication and experimenting? And she agreed, because I basically told her, like, I'm going to do this. I'm feeling good. And she agreed. She said, as long as you feel good and your blood levels are fine, then I'm okay with you being off of it. So you definitely want to do it, you know, with your doctor. Anybody else?
Hey, Amy.
Yeah.
That was the other thing I was going to say, was actually the medication was people complaining that all of a sudden they feel dizzy or feel different or having issues, is kind of look into them needing to wean off of some of their medications and talking to their doctors. Because a lot of people chalk it up to Plexus or issues with that, when in fact it's their blood pressure. Mm-hmm. They're on blood pressure medications. They're on all sorts of different medications that now that they've been on the triplex for 2, 3, 4, 6 months, they actually don't need as much medication. And that's actually one of the issues that I've been coming up with is, well, what's your blood pressure? And their blood pressure is low because they don't need so much anymore. And that's for the doctor for sure.
Right.
But
they have to know. I'm so glad you brought that up. Especially, I was waiting for one of my nurses to chime in. And a lot of times too, like that happens with their blood sugars. Like if they're on blood sugar medication, I've seen that too. Like their levels are off. Well, it's because you have not adjusted your dose, but you've been taking Plexus for 2 months. So great comment. Any?
I have one.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if this was covered or not because I missed the first part of this call. I was in an appointment with my daughter, but one of the things that I experienced with one of my ambassadors was a rash. Did you go over that at all?
I did not. I'm glad you brought. Go ahead.
We battled that to the point where I'm sure it was Dieoff. Now, to this point, she went to a doctor and a dermatologist, and it went on for weeks. I mean, I'm talking like 8 weeks. And I don't like to bring that up because I don't like to scare people because it's rare. I mean, with 100+ ambassadors, I've only ever seen it once. But I truly believe that her rash was Dieoff, as well as I've had 1 or 2 people come and actually get a gynecological yeast infection.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought both of those up. Both of those are actually, so the yeast infection is actually more common. You can get people who get a yeast infection once they start Plexus. And any woman who's had one of those knows that sucks. So, but that again is their body getting rid of that extra yeast. Now the rash is also Dieoff, but it's now of course we want to ask questions, right, to make sure it's Dieoff. Like you have to eliminate everything. Like, okay, you didn't eat something you've never eaten before, and typically allergic reaction rashes look different than a Dieoff rash. But so you got to ask all those questions to really eliminate everything to come to the conclusion that it's Dieoff. But actually 2 people on our team, Emily and Nathan Lovett, husband and wife, they both had rashes for Dieoff. I was still brand new. Emily was one of my first ambassadors. And so when she got that rash, we were like, holy cow. She went to her doctor and her doctor confirmed it. Yeah, it was Dieoff. Here's the thing that happens a lot with Dieoff. I didn't mention it. I completely forgot. For people who have symptoms of that bad yeast overgrowth, whether it be an autoimmune disease or whatever, you've seen that chart with all the symptoms. A lot of times Dieoff can mimic those symptoms and just be an increase or worse version. So for Emily, she actually has, I can't pronounce, I think it's psoriatic arthritis, where it comes out in like her skin and her nails. And so then it made sense that her Dieoff would come through in the form of a rash. And you guys can look that up. So you can just Google Dieoff. And the actual name is, like I said, a Herxheimer reaction. But it can be skin breakouts. You can even get a sinus infection. You can get a fever. You can get like hives or a rash. Now, those are all rare. Most people just get like, headache and feeling kind of cruddy. You can get increased joint pain or muscle pain. So a lot of times we'll have people who start the triplex and all of a sudden they feel very achy, like their arthritis is flaring up. That again is a Dieoff. And that's something we can certainly, you can always look it up, but it's the Dieoff and it's from the antifungal. So they're, like I said, they're not going to get Dieoff from just being on like Slim or Edge. And Amy brought up a good point too. A lot of times people are quick to blame Plexus for everything. So that's why it's really important to ask those questions. Had somebody the other day who took Edge for the first time. Their heart rate shot up. They were sweating and we were trying to figure it out. Come to find out, she had just mowed the grass in like 110-degree weather. We're like, yeah, it's not the Edge. You were outside for an hour pushing a lawnmower in 110-degree heat.
Can you hear me? I got cut off of the thing. My computer decided that it was a great time to update and shut off. So now I'm on my phone. But when I went through Dieoff the second time, when I had my surgery, I had to quit products for a few days. And when I started back on them, I went through Dieoff and I got a rash. And I didn't know what it was from because I didn't expect to go through Dieoff again. And I will say a Dieoff rash was probably the most itchy rash that I've ever had, aside from, believe it or not, one time I actually had scabies that I got from being in the hospital when I delivered my son. And that was the only time that I've ever itched worse. Hives and chicken pox and everything. That Dieoff rash was the itchiest, craziest rash I've ever had. And it took me forever to figure out what it was, that it was Dieoff, because I immediately then wanted to back down off of things. And I think that's hard because when you're that uncomfortable, your immediate reaction is to shy away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way I was going to get through it was to push through it and actually up it and get through it.
Yeah.
That was really, really hard.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not
people. And that's actually 2 die-off. So a rash is die-off, is a die-off symptom, but body itchiness is another die-off symptom. So you had like the double whammy there.
Yeah, it was crazy itchy.
Yeah.
So funny, good story about mowing the grass and edge.
Yeah.
Last night I made dinner for Bruce, and he had been out in the yard mowing. We have a really big yard. It's like over an acre, and he'd been out there for several hours already. Well, he didn't come in the house until like 9 o'clock. Well, I'd made dinner at like 6, and he walks in. I'm like, gosh, I can't believe you were out there so long. And he looked at me and he goes, well, you're the one giving me the edge.
Yeah.
We are getting so much done around here. It's unbelievable.
I know. Me too. I'm obsessed with it. Obsessed. But that, that's along with a lot of like troubleshooting and knowing die-off and detox. You also need to know your products.
Uh-huh.
So if it comes to you and says, my heart rate skyrocketed on edge, if you ask them, okay, well, can you handle a cup of coffee? And they say, yeah, I had 12 of them today. It's not right, because we know edge doesn't raise our heart rate. Edge has the other ingredient to actually lower the blood pressure. So knowing about your products too is going to help you when somebody comes to you with an objection or an issue.
That's right.
Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate everyone being on the call. I love seeing everyone every time and chatting. I'm going to stop recording now.